Hello, I'm Addie, and you are watching Books and Tea Time for the first time in 8 months. I have not recorded a video in 2023. Welcome. If this is your first video, welcome back to my channel. If this is not your first video, I miss making content so much. I'm happy to be back. I figured for my first video back, doing the mid-year book freakout tag would be a really easy and helpful way to talk about my reading year in like a somewhat concise and hopefully put together manner, and kind of like talk through what I've been reading this year. Obviously, we have a change of scenery. I have moved again. Lots of life updates that will probably slowly come out throughout my vlogs in the near future, because I'm really in the mood to vlog. But for right now, for the sake of a short-ish video, and my sanity, yeah, I live in a different place now. I now live in an apartment. And I'm not a huge fan of this angle with the TV, but I liked how my bookshelf looked. I now have a whole romance shelf. So yeah, life updates to come, but basically what I can say as far as reading this year is I got off to a really bad start. For the first like 4 months of the year, I was in a pretty gnarly reading slump, or just like not really reading a lot, not really enjoying the stuff that I was reading, a lot of 3-star kind of vibes, but it has been getting better. I've been listening to so many audiobooks. I really can't focus unless I have an audio these days. The claw clip was driving me absolutely bonkers, so we took it out. Question number 1 is the best book that I have read this year. So even though I did say that I was having trouble in reading a lot of 1-star reads, there are 2 absolute standout faves. I mean, I actually in the recent months have been reading a lot of good books, but my absolute favorites of the year so far. First and foremost, we have Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I am quite literally obsessed with this cover. It usually sits like this, outward facing, which is why this looks a mess. But yeah, this is the first of Brandon Sanderson's secret projects. If you're a Sanderson fan, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're not, you probably don't care. This book was exactly what I needed. I read it in like, I think February or March. And it was so funny. It's very much, it feels like you are like in a cozy tavern sitting around a fire, and you just have a very skilled storyteller sharing an enthralling and captivating tale with you. It was so creative and so imaginative, but more than anything, I just loved our main character Tress so much. She collects teacups, and really she's just like she's like the antithesis of the chosen one fantasy trope, where she chooses to go on this adventure to, not because she needs adventure or she wants adventure in her life, or because she's unhappy with her circumstances, or because like, you know, she's unhappy living on this island with her family, but because she has to do so to save someone that she loves, to save someone that she cares about. Arista is burying her pee in the litter box right now. Apologies if you can hear that. So yeah, I loved Tress as a main character. She was so fun, and just watching her go on this adventure, it's like kind of pirate fantasy-esque, but with a very unique world, as it is a Brandon Sanderson novel. And it was so fun. It just made me smile and laugh, and I annotated it to high heaven, obviously. If you like fantasy, this is a standalone, and it was just truly fantastic. Loved it so much. Then also, because I cannot possibly pick one, I have a new absolute favorite of all time, and that is The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless. This is an Irish history. It's like a historical fantasy with Irish mythology and Irish folklore and Irish history kind of all woven together very beautifully. Imagine Game of Thrones if it was only from the perspective of the women, like Daenerys, like Arya, you know, all of our big name female leads in Game of Thrones. I personally love and have a very deep connection with my Celtic, my Irish roots, if you will. I studied the language in college, and the literature and the history and the culture as well, as part of my Irish minor. I quite literally feel like this book was written for me specifically, and I love it so much. And the second one comes out in the UK in September. It doesn't come out here in America until October, so I am going to be anxiously waiting and counting down the minutes until I have the sequel in my hands, because it was just so good. Shauna Wallace is absolutely brilliant. She is a debut author, if I'm not mistaken. If you like fantasy, if you like historical fantasy, and if you are upset by the conclusion of the Game of Thrones TV show, I just feel like you would really like this. I just highly recommend it. You gotta check it out. It was fantastic. Okay, the second question is the best sequel that you read this year. Best sequel that I read. I didn't really read a lot of sequels, but I did read a prequel. So I'm gonna count that because technically it came out after the original, obviously. So even though it's not chronologically in terms of like the world a sequel, I'm gonna say Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi. Bitter is the prequel to Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. I read Pet, I think, a year or two ago, absolutely loved it. And Bitter was different, but still fantastic. So Bitter follows Jam, who is the main character of Pet, follows her mother when she's a teenager and she's enrolled in this art school. And it was so wonderful to get to spend time with Bitter and spend time in her head, and to watch her as her immediate friend group and her school and the society and the culture that she's part of in, oh my god, I don't remember what the city is called, but there's this revolution going on. I really loved how Akwaeke Emezi uses Bitter's storyline and her life to navigate the different roles that exist within revolution and radical movements, and how, you know, everybody has their own way to resist, to push back, whether it's, you know, through your art, whether you're organizing protests and marches, whether you're organizing like acts of mutual aid and things like that. And so it was really beautiful to see that and to watch Akwaeke kind of break that down for the reader. Also, even though my experience is very drastically different from Bitter's, obviously, as I am a white woman and she is a young black woman, it was really challenged me, I think, in a very healthy way to look at where my role is in our present society and what I feel called towards in my own journey of resistance, and how it intersects with all of the different you know, movements, so to speak, and the intersections of all those movements together. I don't know, it made me think. It really made me think so much, and I love when books do that, but also at the same time, I really loved seeing Bitter and Aloe meet each other, because it's the most adorable thing when you know that they're gonna have a baby and be parents, and like, you know their child from Pet, you know Jam, you know how she grows up and the love that she feels for her parents and the love that they give towards her. It was just so sweet and wholesome to see how they met and how their relationship kind of blossomed. So that was amazing, and it's just like one of those sweet little moments that I really enjoyed from like a plot perspective. Really liked it. It was definitely the best sequel that I read, even though it's technically a prequel, but I'm gonna cheat and say it. Question number 3 is a new release that has already come out that I haven't read yet. And I have 2 for this one. The first one is Witch King by Martha Wells. Martha Wells is the author of the Murderbot Diaries books. I'm on book 3, I think, in that series, and I really like it. It's very fun. And Witch King is her fantasy debut. I don't really know anything else about it other than it's her debut, and I've heard really good things so far from people who have read it. So I definitely want to get to that one at some point. Also, one that I am super excited for and just got out of the library. This came out, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Genevieve Gornichek. She wrote The Witch's Heart, which I think I read 2 years ago, and it was one of the best books. It made my top 5 of the year. It was absolutely fantastic. That one was a Loki and Angerboda retelling, kind of like Norse mythology vibes. And this one is kind of like a historical leaning fantasy. It's about the lives of 2 women, one who's desperate to save her missing sister, and the other a witch who's destined to become the Queen of Norway. So I'm very interested in how this explores sisterhood, because I've seen a lot of people commenting on how they were impressed by that aspect of it, like the sisterhood exploration in the novel. And also just because I loved her debut so much, I just trust her. to write a really good book. Question number 4 is quite a big one, and that is the most anticipated releases you have for the second half of the year. I'm just gonna burn through a bunch of them because I have so many. First and foremost, Better Hate Than Never by Chloe Leese. It's the sequel to Two Wrongs Make a Right, which came out last fall. This is a new series by Chloe Leese, who's my favorite romance author of all time. She's an absolute gem. She wrote the Bergman Brothers books, but this was the first book in a new series. Clearly I loved it. This made the top 5 books last year. If not, I think this was my favorite book from last year, honestly. It is a Much Ado About Nothing retelling. It was fantastic. And the sequel is about the female main character's sister, and it is a 10 Things I Hate About You inspired Taming of the Shrew retelling, and it comes out in October, and I am quite literally buzzing with excitement every moment that we get closer to that book being released. So I'm very excited about that one. That one's my top number 1 most anticipated book this year. Next is The Words of Kings and Prophets, which is the sequel to this. Again, it comes out in October. October's a big month for me in terms of reading. Death Valley by Melissa Broder. I don't know anything about this book other than Melissa Broder wrote Milk Fed, which I really enjoyed and have talked about briefly on my channel before. But I just want to read more by her because I really enjoyed Milk Fed and gave it such a high rating. I also want to reread Milk Fed and purchase it and annotate it, but you know, that's for later down the line. But I noticed that she was coming out with a new book called Death Valley, and the cover looked cool, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll add that to my ever-growing TBR. Mammoths at the Gates by Nhi Vo. It is the 4th book, I think, in the Singing Hills cycle. I reorganized my bookshelves and now I like can't find things. But yeah, it's the 4th book in the Singing Hills cycle. It's a series of novellas about this monk that travels around and records oral histories. Again, you get the feeling that you're being told a story around a fire, and I just really enjoy that. I also love the audiobooks, so I highly recommend the audio if you're interested in those. Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, which is gonna appear later in this video. War of the Wilds is I think either a YA or a new adult fantasy that I have seen some buzz about on TikTok and Bookstagram that I'm really interested in. Mostly, if I'm being honest, it's the cover that made me put this on my TBR. It looks stunning. And last but certainly not least, the sequel to She Who Became the Sun, He Who Drowned the World, which is a fantastic title, is coming out, I think, at the end of this month. But I'm absolutely dying to get my hands on that one. Lots of sequels to books that I'm very excited to. Okay, number 5, we're getting into controversial, spicy territory. My biggest disappointment of the year is the worst book that I read this year, hands down. And I'm going to be fully transparent. The only reason I did not DNF this book is because it was satisfying a prompt for the competition that I'm in with my coworkers. We're doing a summer reading competition, and in order to get like X amount of points, I needed to read a book about books. So I powered through and I read this whole piece of garbage, but it is a new release, The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This was a clever idea. The plot was interesting. And I really liked the idea that, you know, it takes place in this massive library that's like 2 miles wide, the size of a city, and it contains so much endless knowledge, this and that. Like, it was a very interesting premise, which is how I got sucked in. But quite honestly, this book is disgustingly fat phobic, just like beat you over the head with it as well. And I just really hate that. It constantly pulled me out of the narrative and made me angry. And yeah, that's that. So that really pissed me off. And also the ending was very rushed, and I feel like it was doing like one too many things at once. Like, it was very ambitious, and there is going to be another book, but I don't think I'm going to read it. I can't be bothered because it was like so many different characters, and like their whole personality is just their physical appearance and their weight, and, you know, comments about food. I can't stand it. I hate it. Stop doing it, please. Number 6 is my biggest surprise, And my biggest surprise is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. And now, let me preface this by saying, Sarah Gailey is one of my top 5 favorite authors of all time. I love them. I worship their writing. It is exceptional. That being said, I am usually very impatient when reading thrillers because I want to know what happens, and that is completely my problem. It's not a problem with thrillers, but when it comes to thrillers, I'm very impatient, and when it comes to horror, I'm a baby. I'm a scaredy cat. So I was a little nervous about this like kind of thriller horror mixture. It's a book about serial killers, or a serial killer, but this book was fantastic. It was incredible. I listened to the audiobook for it in 2 days. I absolutely devoured it, and like, yes, I loved it because it's Sarah Gailey, but I also just like was so pleasantly surprised to have enjoyed like this thriller horror book so much. It made me feel like, ooh, who am I? Can I read scary books now? Like, no, because there's a very specific reason I think why this book didn't bother me. I can't tell you it without spoiling the book, but I feel like I have a very weird line between like creepy stuff that I enjoy and things that are too creepy, and this like rode that line perfectly. You know, it was just exceptional. But if you like scary stuff, absolutely read this book. Sarah Gailey is a genius. I have been making my way through their backlist for a while because like last year I read 3 or 4 books by them. This year I read Just Like Home, and I also very recently, like as of a few days ago, finished Magic for Liars, which was their debut novel. Exceptional. Literally mouth-watering how good it was. I should have mentioned that for my best book of the year, but because I just finished it, it didn't occur to me until now. But I'm probably going to do a whole video at some point on all of Sarah Gailey's works once I complete reading most of them. I realized that I've been doing a very bad job at giving synopses for most of these. Bear with me. It's been 8 months since I've recorded a video, but that one is about a girl whose father is a serial killer who has since passed away, and her mother is dying, and she has to go back to the house where, you know, all the things happened where her father had, like, you know, tortured and buried his victims. And she has to go home because her mother is dying, and she has to help, like, close and sell the house and, like, clean it out and all that stuff. And some creepy things start to happen. Next, we have a new favorite author, and for this one, I'm gonna do a historical romance author. And that is Scarlett Peckham. Specifically, I read the entire trilogy of Secrets of Charlotte Street, which is a spicy historical BDSM romance series. The first 2 books were 5 out of 5 stars, fantastic. I wasn't super crazy about the third one, but that's a personal reason. So I highly recommend this series. The first one is The Duke I Tempted. I also started listening to the audio of one of her more recent titles, which I think came out in 2020, The Rakeess. Love her writing. She's a lot like Tessa Dare, if you've ever read Tessa Dare. She does a really good job of like giving you like those butterfly feelings and writing these saucy, spicy historical romance series. Hi, baby. Hi. Do you want to say hi to everybody? Arista wants to say hi to everybody. I don't think you guys have seen them since they were kittens, but this is Arista. She did not like being held. Okay, I'm gonna put you down now, but they are 1 year old now. I'm crying. She is rubbing herself against my tripod, which is why it's shaking. Apologies. Anyway, that is a very smooth transition to question 8, which is your new fictional crush. And my new fictional crush is from the second book in the Secrets of Charlotte Street series by Scarlett Peckham. The second book is called The Earl I Ruined, and my new fictional crush is Julian. He's the male love interest in that book. And that man just like does something to me. You have to read it. If you know, you know. I want to do like a my favorite authors video soon. Would you guys be interested in that? Should I do like dedicated videos to each author, or should I do like top 5 authors, top 10 authors? Let me know down below. Question number 9, new favorite character. Gotta be Tress, as I said, simply because I see so much of myself in Tress in terms of personality, and like I've never felt so personally connected to a main character in a fantasy novel before, and so I just loved her. She was fantastic. I'm trying to think of other characters that I've really liked. Definitely Viv from Legends and Lattes, and honestly both of the main characters, Fola and Gormla from Children of Gods and Fighting Men, fantastic. But if I had to pick one, which of course I haven't done that for any of the other questions, so I don't know why I'm starting now, I would pick Dress. So yes, next question, a book that made me cry. This book made me cry good tears, but If Only You by Chloe Leese. This is the 6th installment in the Bergman Brothers series. Came out in April, May, I don't know, but it's the Bergman Brothers series, book 6 by Chloe Leese, who I mentioned earlier. She wrote this book, Two Wrongs Make a Right. First of all, I mean, like, look at those tabs. But I have a post on my Instagram where I reviewed this book that was somewhat more coherent than this is about to be. But this book just, it was such a unique and refreshing romance. I mean, obviously I love this series. I love Chloe Leese so much. All the characters that she writes are so full of love and heart and personality, and they literally jump off the page. Like, I have never read characters that feel so real. Specifically though, what made me cry the most is, so this is the second to last book in this series. The last one, if you know anything about the series, it's a 7-book series because there are 7 members of the family. The final book comes out next year in the spring, and kind of towards the end of each book you get a little bit of a hint as to what the next one's going to be about. And when you get that hint at the end of this book, I bawled my eyes out. Like, we're talking about feeling seen by Tress. I felt called out by the scene with Vigo at the end of this book. So I am certain, I've never been more certain about anything in my life than I am that the last book in the Bergman Brothers series is going to wreck me. It is going to pull me apart and put me back together in the best way. And just, like, I don't know, tears. A book that made me happy, Legends and Lattes. This book is darling. And I mean, like, I'm like pretty late on the hype train for this one, but a cozy fantasy about an orc that wants to open a coffee shop. I don't know, it's just so good. It's about friendship and, like, allowing yourself to see why you're worthy of love and why you're worthy of friendship, or just simply that you are, not why, but like simply that you are worthy of love, that you're worthy of friendship. And that, I don't know, it was so good. It made me laugh, it made me smile, and it just lifted my heart. Most beautiful book that I bought this year. I know that I've been talking about these books so much, but, like, look at these 2 covers. Like, let's just take a moment. First of all, I mean, like, duh. But, like, look at this one. There's so much happening, but I love it. It's just fantastic. Also, the naked cover, oh my god, it's beautiful. Last but certainly not least, question number 13 is must reads before the end of the year. So obviously all the books that I mentioned in the anticipated reads category are also on this list, but in terms of things that I already own, I mean, I really have to read Weaver and the Witch King. I have that out from the library. I'm currently reading The Final Strife by Sarah L. Arifi. I have, like, the physical book in my room, but this is the dust jacket, and isn't she gorgeous? I just love it. This is a really good book. I'm taking my time with it because I'm annotating it, and as I said, I have been exclusively in an audio space, but I really want to annotate this book, so it's been a slow process, but every page that I have read is so good. Very epic, exciting fantasy. I also started and read, like, the first 40 pages of The Hunger of the Gods, but I want to do a spoiler reading vlog for this one because I did a spoiler vlog for the first one. I'll have a card to that up above, but this is the second book in the Bloodsworn saga. Again, I can't wait to read this, but I'm reading it physically and also planning a video for it, and since I haven't been recording, I haven't been reading it, but the first book was absolutely fantastic. Again, one that made my top 5 from last year, so I definitely want to get to that. And then also really want to read the Broken Earth trilogy this year. I have the first 2 books. I don't own the third one yet, but I really want to read this. I said I was going to read it this summer, but I think it might be a fall endeavor. I'm thinking about doing a vlog where I read all 3 of them. It's just about damn time that I've gotten around to reading these books because everybody loves them. They won consecutive 3 Hugo Awards in a row. Like, how have I not read these? I don't know what's wrong with me. I really want to do reading vlogs, so if you have any requests, I want to do a romance one because I have 2 books right now, 2 romance books right now that I'm probably going to start reading in the next day or so. I want to do one for the Broken Earth trilogy. I have to do one for Hunger of the Gods, a spoiler one for this one. So let me know what you're interested in seeing. Thanks for watching this video. I'm so excited to be back and talk to you guys again. Life updates, maybe an apartment tour, more cat and dog content to come in the future, and obviously book content. I forget my outro. Something, and then I say, that's your jam. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if that's your jam, and I'll see you in my next video. Love you. Bye.